All right, so have you ever like wondered why some marketing campaigns just totally work? Like they get you hooked on a jingle or suddenly you're craving a product you didn't even know existed. Well, get this, persuasion is actually a science, and there's a whole world of research on like what makes people say yes.
Today, we're diving into a fascinating book called Yes, 50 Scientifically Proven Ways to Be Persuasive, to uncover some of these surprising and sometimes counterintuitive strategies. One of the first things that really caught my eye was this concept of social proof. You know, the saying, monkey see, monkey do. Ray, turns out it's not just a silly saying. There's actually some serious psychological weight behind it. We are heavily influenced by what others are doing, especially if we perceive those others as being, similar to us. It's like we're constantly looking for cues on how to behave, and seeing others do something gives us this like unspoken permission to do it ourselves. Like the book is this really interesting example about hotel towel reuse programs. You know those little cards in the bathroom asking you to reuse your towels to save the environment?
Well, researchers found that simply changing the wording on those cards to highlight how many other guests reuse their towels led to a significant increase in participation. Just by tweaking the message to emphasize that other people were doing it, they were able to influence behavior. It's pretty amazing, right? It makes you think about all those times you've been swayed by social proof without even realizing it. Like, you're more likely to join a long line at a restaurant, assuming it must be good because everyone else is waiting, or you're more likely to buy a product online if it has tons of positive reviews. We all do it. It's like this unconscious force that shapes our decisions. But here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little bit tricky. The book dives into this concept called the magnetic middle, which basically means that highlighting negative social proof can sometimes backfire and actually encourage the very behavior you're trying to prevent. They give this example of a national park that put up signs saying that a lot of visitors had stolen petrified wood from the park. You think that would deter people from stealing, right? But guess what? Theft actually tripled after they put up the signs. It's like people saw it as sort of permission slip. Since everyone else was doing it, it somehow became more acceptable in their minds. So the takeaway here, and it's a crucial one, is that if you're trying to promote a desired behavior, you need to focus on positive social proof. Don't accidentally give people permission to do the wrong thing by highlighting negative examples. It's all about framing the message in a way that emphasizes the positive actions you want to encourage. Now, have you ever felt totally overwhelmed by too many choices? Like you go to the store to buy something simple like jam. There are like 50 different varieties. You end up spending an hour staring at the shelves and then just walk out empty-handed. I know, I've been there. Turns out this paradox of choice, as the book calls it, is a real thing. In one study, a supermarket set up a display with either 6 or 24 varieties of gourmet jam. And guess what? People were 10 times more likely to buy jam when there were only 6 options. It's like our brains get overloaded when we're faced with too many choices. We end up just shutting down completely.
This is super important insight for anyone who's presenting options to others, whether it's in marketing, business, or even just in our personal life. Sometimes less is more. If you want people to actually make a decision, it's better to offer a curated selection rather than overwhelming them with an endless sea of choices. Give them a few really good options and let them choose from there. Okay, this next one is so simple but surprisingly powerful. It's all about the magic word because. You know how sometimes you're asked to do something and you're about to say no, but then the person gives you a reason, even if it's a super obvious one, and you end up saying yes. It's like our brains just crave that because, even if the reason itself isn't that compelling. Like the book talks about this study where researchers asked people if they could cut in line to use a copy machine. When they just asked to cut in line, only about 60% of people said yes. But when they added a reason like, because I'm in a rush, the compliance rate jumped to over 90%. It's crazy how even a flimsy reason can dramatically increase the chances of someone agreeing to your request. And you know what? I totally do this myself. Like the other day I was at the grocery store and the cashier asked if I wanted to donate $1 to a charity. I was about to say no, but then she added, every little bit helps. And I instantly said yes. It was that because that totally got me. It's a powerful little tool, right? So remember, next time you ask someone for something, whether it's a big favor or just to pass the salt, give them a reason. It doesn't even have to be a particularly good reason. Our brains are wired to respond to that because, and it can make a huge difference in getting people to say yes. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about active commitment. The book dives into this idea that if you really want someone to commit to something, you need to get them actively involved in the decision-making process. For example, it's been shown that people who write down their goals are significantly more likely to achieve them than those who just think about them. It's like the act of putting pen to paper solidifies the commitment in a way that simply thinking about it doesn't. That totally resonates with me. Like I am way more likely to get things done when I write them down on my to-do list. It's like having this visual reminder staring me in the face, and it helps me stay accountable to myself. So if you're trying to get someone to commit to something, whether it's a team at work, your kids doing their chores, or even just yourself sticking to a new habit, encourage them to actively write down their commitment. It's a simple but surprisingly effective technique for making those commitments feel more real and tangible. All right, get ready for a real mind bender, because this next one is pretty counterintuitive. The book suggests that sometimes acknowledging a weakness can actually make you more persuasive. It sounds crazy, right? Yeah. But think about it. When someone tries to present themselves as perfect or flawless, it can come across as inauthentic or even a little bit suspicious. But when someone is upfront about their shortcomings, it can actually build trust and make them seem more relatable. They use the example of Progressive Insurance, which is pretty interesting. Progressive actually advertises their competitors' rates. You'd think that would drive customers away, but it doesn't. It actually works in their favor because it shows that they're confident enough in their own offerings to be transparent about the competition. It's like they're saying, hey, we're not afraid to show you the other options because we know we're still the best choice. It's a bold move, and it makes you rethink the whole idea of presenting a perfect, polished image, right? Sometimes being a little bit vulnerable and acknowledging your weaknesses can be a surprisingly effective way to build trust and make your message more persuasive. It's like you're showing people that you're human, and that can be a powerful connection. All right, so we're back and ready to uncover even more persuasive secrets from, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive. And, this next section really got me thinking about all those subtle cues that can influence our decisions without us even realizing it. Get this study found that just by placing a simple message on a tip jar that said, place your money here, contributions significantly increased. That little suggestion just nudged people in the right direction without being pushy or demanding. It makes you realize how even the smallest details can make a difference, right? And you see this all the time in marketing, like those limited time offer signs. They create this sense of urgency that makes you feel like you'll miss out if you don't act now. Now, let's be honest, we've probably all fallen for that at some point. It's like our brains are wired to respond to those kinds of cues, even if we know they're just marketing tactics. But here's a persuasion technique that's a little more old school, borrowed from none other than Benjamin Franklin himself. Apparently, old Ben was quite the master persuader, and he had this one rival in the Pennsylvania legislature who, really disliked him. So what did Franklin do? He asked his rival to borrow a rare book from his library. And the rival, totally surprised by the request, agreed. And guess what? They ended up becoming friends. It sounds crazy, right? But the book explains that by asking for a small favor, Franklin actually created a sense of obligation in his rival. It's like once the rival did him that favor, they felt more inclined to like him. It's this whole principle of reciprocity, where we feel compelled to return favors, even if they're small. And here's another one that might seem counterintuitive. Sometimes asking for a small donation can actually be more effective than asking for a large one. The book describes a study where researchers asked people to donate to a charity. Some were simply asked to contribute, while others were told that even a tiny amount would be helpful. And guess what? The people who were told that even a small amount would be helpful were actually more likely to donate. It's like it removes that barrier of thinking, oh, my donation won't make a difference anyway. It makes people feel like even a small contribution can have an impact. This really makes you think about how we approach charitable giving. We often focus on those big flashy donations, but maybe those smaller contributions are just as important, if not more so, because they make giving feel more accessible and encourage more people to participate. All right, let's switch gears and talk about something a little more lighthearted. Brand recognition. Have you ever noticed how certain brands just stick in your mind?
Like, you can't get that catchy jingle or that funny mascot out of your head. It's not always about the product itself, It's about how it's presented and how often you see it. The book uses the example of the Energizer Bunny. Remember those commercials? The bunny just kept going and going. Even after the commercial was over, it was super memorable, right? But here's the thing. Energizer actually borrowed that idea from Duracell. Duracell had run a similar campaign years earlier, but they let their trademark expire. And Energizer swooped in, and, the rest is advertising history. So, what's the takeaway here? Repetition and consistent messaging are key. It's not enough to have a great idea. You have to keep putting it out there in front of people so it sticks in their minds. Think about your own communication, whether it's a marketing campaign, a presentation, or even just trying to get your point across in a meeting. Repetition and consistency can really make your message stick. It's like the more people hear your message, the more likely they are to remember it and be influenced by it. Now, let's get a little meta here. This whole deep dive is about persuasion, right?
But it's not just about sneaky tricks or manipulating people. It's about understanding the psychology behind why we do the things we do and using that knowledge to communicate more effectively. One of the most effective ways to persuade someone is to tap into their values and beliefs. The book talks about how aligning your message with someone's existing worldview can make them more receptive to your ideas. It's like you're speaking their language and connecting with them on a deeper level. Think about a time when someone tried to convince you of something you already believed in. It's probably pretty easy, right? Because it already fit with your understanding of the world. So when you're trying to persuade someone, try to see things from their perspective. What are their values? What do they care about? If you can frame your message in a way that aligns with their existing beliefs, you'll be much more likely to get them on board. It's like you're building a bridge of understanding instead of trying to force your ideas on them. Now, this next section is about something called social norms marketing, and it's pretty fascinating.
It's basically the idea that you can influence behavior by highlighting what most people are already doing. The book is an example of a campaign to reduce alcohol consumption on college campuses. Instead of focusing on the dangers of drinking, they put up posters saying things like, most students have 3 or fewer drinks when they party. Ooh. Now, the actual statistics might have been different, but the idea was to correct students' misperceptions about how much their peers were actually drinking. And you know what? It worked. Students started drinking less because they thought everyone else was doing it. It's like we have this innate desire to conform to social norms, even if those norms aren't necessarily accurate. And this approach can be used for all sorts of positive behavior change, like encouraging people to recycle more or eat healthier. It's all about creating that sense of, hey, everyone else is doing this, so I should too. Speaking of subtle influences, those mirrors they have in stores. Turns out they might not just be for checking your outfit. The book talks about how seeing yourself in a mirror can actually make you more self-aware.
And when you're more self-aware, you're more likely to act in line with your values. It's like you're literally facing yourself, so you're less likely to do something you know is wrong. It's a subtle but powerful reminder of who you are and what you stand for. It's fascinating how such a simple thing can have such a profound impact, It really makes you think about the psychology behind our everyday actions and how we're constantly being influenced by subtle cues, whether we realize it or not. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the fascinating world of persuasion. And, as we wrap up this exploration of, yes, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive, I've been thinking a lot about how we can use these principles, not just for like selling stuff, but for actually making a positive impact on the world. One of the things that really stood out to me is this idea of using persuasion to promote pro-environmental behavior. Like the book talked about how appealing to social norms can encourage people to recycle more or conserve energy. It's like if you can show people that most people are already doing something good for the environment, they're more likely to jump on board and do it too. It's a really powerful concept, It's not about guilt-tripping people or making them feel bad. It's about creating a sense of positive momentum and showing them that their actions can make a difference. It's like we're all in this together, and we can create a better future if we all do our part. Okay, you ready for this one? Because it's a little bit out there. The book talks about how our names can actually influence our career choices. I know it sounds crazy, right? But there's actually research to back it up. Like they found that a disproportionately high number of dentists are named Dennis. It's like there's something about the name Dennis that just subconsciously draws people to the field of dentistry. It's a funny example, but it highlights this idea that we're subtly influenced by things that remind us of ourselves, even if it's just our names. It's like our brains are always looking for patterns and connections, and sometimes those connections are pretty unexpected. All right, salespeople, this one's for you. The book talks about this technique called mirroring, and it's all about subtly matching the other person's behavior to build rapport and trust. It's like if they lean forward, you lean forward. If they use certain hand gestures, you subtly mirror those gestures. Now, don't go overboard and make it creepy, It has to be subtle and natural. But the idea is that mirroring creates this subconscious sense of connection, like you're on the same wavelength. It's like you're speaking their body language, which can make them feel more comfortable and open to your message. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about how to deliver bad news. We all have to do it sometimes right, whether it's a disappointing performance review or, telling someone their project got canceled. It's never fun, but there are ways to do it effectively. The book suggests that acknowledging a weakness can actually make you more persuasive when delivering bad news. It's like you're not trying to sugarcoat things or pretend everything's perfect. You're being honest and transparent, which can actually build trust and make the other person feel like you're on their side. So the next time you have to deliver some tough news, try framing it in a way that acknowledges the negatives but also highlights the positives. It's not about hiding the truth. It's about presenting it in a way that's both honest and constructive. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of persuasion. Hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as I have. It's amazing how much psychology goes into just about everything we do, and how understanding these principles can help us communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, and maybe even make the world a little bit better. So next time you're trying to get someone to see your side of things, remember these techniques, but use them wisely, right? Persuasion is a powerful tool, and it's important to use it ethically and for good. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep those persuasion skills sharp.